Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. I'm very excited about today's show, but before we meet our guest, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my childhood for a few reasons. I grew up in a farm in Conway, South Carolina, and I imagined my life as a life in show business. I lived, I ate, I breathed, I dreamt. Everything about show business I was obsessed with. I would go to the library and I would read every book about show business. I couldn't wait for the day to arrive when I would be able to leave South Carolina, the black and white world that I thought it was, and move to the technicolor world of New York and show business. And I did when I was 18 years old, and that's a whole other show. But I didn't grow up in show business. As a matter of fact, I was an anomaly. No one else in my family was interested in this. They didn't know what to make of me because of my love of show business. But our guest today grew up in show business, and she is show business. Once again, I'm going to keep stalling. I want to dedicate the show today to Elaine Ballas. Elaine Ballas, I had the good fortune of interviewing a few weeks ago. And after the interview, she said, you have to talk to my friend, Jodie Carn. And so thanks to Elaine, Jodie set it up. Now, for those of you who are here for the first time, my show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And today we celebrate Jodi Carn. Now, I'm getting a little feedback there, but I'm sure that you'll take this. If you turn your speakers down, you should be fine. Jodie, how are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. Before we start today, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in right now?
Well, it certainly isn't easy. You know, I do a lot of reading, I study, I watch a lot of news, which makes me more depressed. And of course, I watch all the talk shows, and, you know, you just have to be busy and know that we're going to end up okay.
We have to end up okay. And
Yes.
You said you're doing a lot of reading. Is there any particular book that you're reading now that you recommend to everyone?
Well, right now I'm reading a book about Jack Haley, his grandson called, and he sent me a book about Jack Haley because he knew my mother choreographed The Wizard of Oz. So I'm reading that. So that's fun.
Now, you say that, you know, you just breeze right over that, but I want to focus on this.
Okay.
Anyone who knows me knows that The Wizard of Oz was and is to this day is still my favorite film. And what is so magical about that film is, I mean, a lot of people may not even think of dance when it comes to that movie because the dance comes so effortlessly out of the movement. When Dorothy is skipping down the yellow brick road, there was someone very special in your life who created that special dance.
Yes, that special dance was Dona Massin, who was my mother.
Yes. And did you grow up with this love of that movie, or did you appreciate it as you got older? Where did that movie fit into your life growing up?
Well, when I was a young child, I loved it, of course. And then it really happened later in life when I saw how popular my mother was, and we went on these Oz festivals. And I realized, I mean, this movie was fantastic because when my mother was asked to do The Wizard of Oz, she just thought it was going to be a cute film. She had absolutely no idea it would be the phenomena that it is today.
And of course, I mean, you said you've traveled around the country. This film, I grew up at a time where we didn't have DVDs, we didn't have VHS. The Wizard of Oz was shown once a year, and it was a holiday event. It was a family event. When I think of The Wizard of Oz, I mean, to this day, I will watch the end when Dorothy is getting ready to go back to Kansas. And I cry, I weep like a baby. And it's not necessarily about if you could turn your sound down just a little bit, I'm getting a lot of feedback. But but what I was going to say is that it's not just about what I'm seeing on the screen, but it reminds me of my childhood and being with my grandparents and being with them. And I'm sure that it resonates with so many people around the country. What is the biggest thing about that film that has surprised you the most about the way it's touched people all over the world, essentially?
Well, I think one of it is the music. I think when you hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I mean, who doesn't appreciate that song? I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And my mother was the first person to sing it. They didn't want to put it in the film, which is unbelievable. So when they were playing it and they said, we're not going to put it in. She said, if you don't put that song in the film, you're crazy. So they put it in. And then, of course, Jodi Carn, phenomenal. What can you say? So the song really, I think, touches everybody because it has a message that there's a place like home.
Now, when your mom arrived at MGM, she lied about her age, which is what a lot of people did at that time. And she got into the studio at a very young age, but she came in and she began work as a choreographer on films. Did your mom also aspire to be in front of the cameras instead of behind the cameras?
Not at all. She liked being behind the camera. She came out here from Quebec, Canada, and she was 8 years old. And she took dancing lessons, and which she didn't even have to pay for because they said she had so much talent. And then she got into the studio at MGM at 14, and she said she was 18, and she never stopped working from the time of 14 until age 30.
And when you came along, I mean, do you have brothers and sisters?
I'm it.
You're it.
I'm it.
That's a great it to be. So you grew up. When was that moment? I know I've read your bio and everything. But what was that pivotal moment for you when you said, Mom, this is what I want to do with my life? And what was your mom's response to all of that?
I took dancing lessons at a very young age, but when I decided I think I wanted to really be in show business was with the Mickey Mouse Club. I used to watch that as a child, and I kept saying to my mom, I want to be a Mouseketeer. So she called Sidney Miller, who directed it. And unfortunately, by the time I could have auditioned, they stopped the Mouseketeers.
Wow.
Well, that was heartbreaking because
I can imagine.
So it turned out that I'm good friends with the Mouseketeers of today.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then you went in and you auditioned for Wink Martindale. Now, most of us know Wink Martindale from the game shows, but was he doing a variety show at the time?
Well, this was the Wink Martindale dance party. And I had read that they were auditioning for dancers. And but it said you had to be 16. I was 13. And I talked my mother into taking me to KCOP Studios in Hollywood. And I auditioned and I got it. And I had to hurry up and find myself a partner. So I did. Some guy in the neighborhood was a good dancer. So I lied through all those 3 years.
And did you decide that you were going to be a dancer, or were there other aspects of show business that you were aspiring to?
I loved acting. I loved to act. So when I was 16, I auditioned at Desilu Studios, and I got under contract there, and I studied the method system, the method acting, and which is quite funny. I'd come home from my acting classes, and I never got out of character. I was very dramatic.
Now, one thing that excuse me, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, what I really wanted to do, I would have loved to come where you are in New York. I would have loved to sing and act and dance, but unfortunately I could dance, I could act, but I could not sing, even though I attempted it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the interesting things about the Desilu Studios that a lot of people may or may not know is that Lucille Ball had a true repertory company. Robert Osborne came through that. My dear friend Carol Cook came through that. When you came in and you auditioned at Desilu, did you audition for Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, or what was that process like for you?
No, I remember I walked onto a stage and there was a gentleman there, and I got up and I did a scene, and he said, "We're taking you." And I remember I went every Saturday from from about 10 in the morning till about 2 in the afternoon. So it was 4 hours of continual acting, which was the method.
And who was your mentor? Who was the teacher that you were studying with at that time?
I had two, and I can't remember. One was a woman and one was a man. I was basically more with a man, but I can't remember his name.
Okay. And how long were you with Desilu Studios before you started branching out? And were you doing a lot of television at that time?
Well, at that time, I was 16 when I did Desilu, but yes, I was doing a few things on TV, and then of course I was still doing the Wink Martindale show. And then at 13, I did Blue Hawaii with Elvis, which was really something.
Well, tell us about that experience. What was it like working with Elvis Presley? What was he like when the cameras weren't rolling? And
as nice as can be, as nice as can be. How it took me over to it was Paramount, and she was friends with Malcolm Bilby, who was the head of the music department, and he said they were casting for Blue Hawaii for dancers. So I went and I auditioned and I got it. And yeah, Elvis was a pro, good looking. He's everything that you would want him to be at that time.
And you were, and after that, what was the trajectory of your career? As far as an actress is concerned?
Well, basically, I did some theater. I did a lot of theater for a while, and then I thought I wanted to sing, which is really funny because I was lucky enough to have a singing teacher. And when I was walking out of my singing lesson, Dick of Dick and Dee Dee came up to me and he says, "I want you to record 3 songs." And I said, "Well, thank you very much, but I can't sing." He said, "I don't care. You have the look that I want." And I remember going to Gold Star Recording Studios here in Hollywood, walked in, and who's backing me is the Marvelettes, which was really something. I was a nervous wreck because I was not a singer at all.
Well, it sounds to me, Jodi, as if you were going, as you progress forward, that you didn't put any boundaries on yourself at all. Does that come from your mom? Does that come from you? Was that something you developed? Where does that come from?
Well, I think maybe I wanted to do everything. My grandmother was an opera singer. She was in Italy. My mother had a beautiful singing voice. She sang for many years, but she was basically just wanted to be a dancer and a choreographer. I remember Mervyn LeRoy had her in his office, and he said, "How far do you want to go with your career?" And my mom said, "I'm where I want to be." He said, "You know, I can make you a star." She wasn't interested, which because I met him later in life at the Jockey Ball, and I went up to him and I said, "I'm Dona Massin's daughter." He said, "She's probably the only person I know in show business that said no to being a star." She was.
It's funny. Last night, I was watching The Twilight Zone, and I saw an episode that I'd never seen before with Cal Burnett, in which her guardian angel, Jesse White, comes down, and he wants to give her a life better than the one she has. And what he doesn't realize is that she's perfectly happy with the life that she has.
Yes.
And, but you had the ambition.
Yeah, well, I was a ham. I've always been the ham. My mother wasn't hammy. She was more, and she was so beautiful, and she was in so many films. And she said, "Oh, the makeup, the costumes, everything that she was involved with, I would have loved." She'd rather just put on a pair of, simple clothes, go into the studio, and just teach the dance steps. That's what she wanted to do. And she worked with so many great people.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but when the movies were being made at that time, it was truly a 9-to-5 existence for a lot of people.
Yes.
How early did your mom begin each day? And did she come home? Did you have a nanny at home, or did you go to the studio? What was your childhood like growing up around this?
My childhood was very, very normal. Other than my dancing classes and my singing and my acting classes, I came home, everything was normal. My mom stopped her career at the age of 30 after she had me. So everything was very normal, except me.
Good for you. I love that.
Yeah, I was going to a public school and I really didn't feel comfortable. I liked everybody, but they didn't have what I had, in common. So that's when I went to a school, Hollywood Professional School, where I was with kids my age that had the same ambition.
Now, you have dabbled in all of these areas of show business and successfully, I might add. Was there one particular area that you found that the moment you were doing it, that this was the hat that you wanted to wear, that this is where you belonged?
I think it was on stage. When I did a show called Henrietta VIII. I did about 5 different stage shows, and I loved being on stage. See, I should have gone to New York.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I should have gone to New York.
No, but you were doing all of this in California, and what was it like pursuing a career as a stage actress in LA? I have no frame of reference because I've been in New York my whole life. My adult life, I might add.
Well, I mean, I liked it. I mean, because you would go in, you would audition. It didn't seem like there was anybody that was favored. It was very legitimate. And I just loved being on stage. I loved knowing that there was an audience in front of me. I like knowing, of course, if you screw up any of your dialogue, you're kind of like, it happened to me, by the way. I was doing 40 Carats, and the woman who played my mother, she was drinking something and she was supposed to say something, and she started coughing. And I realized, oh my God, she's choking. But we told the audience, nobody knew, because I just, improvised lines and said, Mom, you're going to be okay. I'm patting her on the back. So, there's something about stage. Because you can't really make a mistake. And if you do, you really have to cover it up. When you're doing film, there's cut. So I've always loved the stage.
Now, you said that you grew up in a very normal, for the most part, household, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But when you were growing up, what were some of the lessons that you learned from your mom about this business? What is the one lesson that today resonates more than anything else from your mom?
She said you're going to have a lot of heartache. She says you're going to have a lot of rejection. And she says you can't take it seriously, because I was very sensitive. I would cry if I went on an audition and I didn't get it. And she said, you got to accept that, So I wasn't really very hard when I was really young. As I got older, I just kind of, realized you're not going to get everything. And I think that's what she taught me. You have to be kind of tough inside.
It's one thing to hear these things, but it's a completely different thing to start living them. Was there a moment in your life where you actually started living that belief system of letting it roll off your back?
When I was a kid, I got very depressed. I would cry and say, why didn't I get that part? And, you go out and you're never what, they want. I remember I went out for a hair commercial, and they said they wanted a blonde. So I went out and I even bleached it very light. When I walk in, they say, oh, no, we don't want that. We want someone with dark hair. They never know what they want.
And they still don't. You have to go convince them I'm what you want.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, you just have to realize you're not going to get everything. It's a tough business, and you grow up very fast.
Well, the next progression for you was that you started doing talk shows, and not as a guest, but as the host. How did that come about?
Well, a gentleman got in touch with me by the name of Shel Reinish, and he was doing a show called The Eclectic Mind. And he said, I would like to interview your mother. He said, I'm so enthralled with The Wizard of Oz, and my mother did like 100 films. So I said, okay, everything was scheduled, and my mom got ill. So I called him and I said, Shel, I can't make it because of my mom. He said, oh no, you're going to make it, but you're going to do the show. So I did. And then after I did that show, he said, I'm curious, how would you do with a show like a Howard Stern? I think I could handle that.
But did he want you to be that extreme?
Oh yeah, Shel was extreme. You had to be very open-minded with. You never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try, and I did. And I did that show for, gosh, it must have been 12 years. And then I thought, I want to go on my own. So I started doing Jodi LA, which was by myself, and that for a few years. And then I did Jodi in Malibu. So altogether, it's like 20 years, but I haven't done it for the last couple of years, and I want to go back to it.
Well, I think you should. I think this should be the launching pad right here.
Yes, I would like to do it, but I have to learn what, how you do this on when you do it streaming and things like that. That's what I'd like.
Well, I'll teach you. It's a full-time job for me, pretty much. But I want to get back to your mom for just a moment, because you just mentioned something that triggered something with me. Nowadays, when you go to a movie or you watch a TV show or something, the credits will go on for 5, maybe even 10 minutes sometimes.
Yes.
In those days, when your mom was working, and I'm going back to 1939 with The Wizard of Oz, at the end of the film, one screen, sometimes two, with a cast list. And so many people that worked on films never got the recognition that I feel that they deserved. Your mom never pursued a career in the spotlight. But did it ever bother you that, for the most part, that most people don't know that your mom was the one who choreographed The Wizard of Oz?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's terrible that they didn't give credits at that time. And I've talked to people that have said it. Even when I met Fred Astaire, he said, your mom was terrific. And I mean, she should get all these credits. No, I think it's very wrong. It's a shame, because she did so many films that she worked with everybody, from Sinatra to Red Skelton to, I mean, you name it. I mean, has so many people she worked with in all those films.
And have you ever thought about writing a book about your mom?
Yes. And everybody tells me to do it. And I think it's about time I do.
I think you should. I mean, she should get the recognition that she deserves.
Yes.
But getting back to your talk show, it started out as Jodi in LA and then Jodi in Malibu. Did the show change at all between the two locations?
Yeah, I did it. I did the show at 3 different studios here. And that's when it was public access. And it was wonderful doing public access. And then they stopped it.
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment. Because, and Elaine and I talked about this, and this is part of the reason that brought us to you. When I first came to New York, and this is in the days before cable, I discovered New York public access television. One of our guests that's watching right now is Bobby Horowitz. And I used to see Bobby Horowitz at Horowitz Inspector, when they were doing all these public access shows. Describe what that world was like to everyone here who doesn't know what that world was like.
Oh, I loved it. You go into the studio and I pick, different guests. And I try my show, all different types of shows. I had celebrities, I had singers, I had porn stars, I had, all different things. And I would walk in and the guest would be there. Most of the time, I did not want to know too much about them. I did my own research, and I wanted to be just casual, and it usually worked out very well that way. And I did some heavy stuff too. I did molestations, and I did animal abuse, and I did happy things, I did sad things.
Did you have the freedom to do what you wanted, or were there people trying to guide you in the direction that they wanted you to go in?
No, actually, I could do what I wanted because I produced the show.
Okay. And with everyone that you interviewed, who were some of the top names that you got to interview? And name a few that got away, that you really came close to interviewing, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I was going to interview Lana Wood, but then I believe she got ill, so that didn't happen. I was kind of interested in doing her. The one who Billy Gray, remember Father Knows Best? Oh yes, I interviewed him. In fact, I interviewed him at my home. And there's so many. I had singers, I had actors. There's so many. My mind just went blank. Billy Vera, remember Billy Vera?
Yes. Yes,
I interviewed him. And so, and then, as I said, a few porn stars.
Was that on the set, or did they come to you?
Well, some of it was on the set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Jodi in LA, they came on the set. Jodi in Malibu was done on location outside, or it was done in my home.
And what did you love most about being in that chair as the host or hostess?
I think it was to pull out what was inside of them. I seem to have a bit of a talent of bringing out what they really feel. I think I make people comfortable, which is, at least that's what they've told me. So that makes me feel good.
And what was the most difficult part about doing this? I mean, you're producing, you're starring on the show, with public access. You are truly chief cook and bottle washer. What were some of the difficulties that you encountered doing that?
Well, some of the shows were kind of sad. So that was difficult. It's hard to do a show and talk to a young girl that had been molested by her father. Or I remember I interviewed a young man who was very much in love with another man, and he committed suicide, and it was very sad. These are sad things, but it was, when he called me, I said, no, I want to do this show. I want to do it because it's such a tragedy and should never happen. So some of my shows were very happy and some were kind of sad like that.
And how long did you do that all along?
That was Jodi in Malibu was probably for about 8 years.
Wow. And are those videos now available?
Pardon me?
Are they available now, those episodes?
Yes, I have a lot of them on the YouTube, but some of them are on VHS. I must have 50 more shows that I can put on. I just have to get a DVD to put it up.
And you've got to transfer from there. Now, did you move from LA to Malibu? What was the reason that there was the change in the show?
Well, I was born and raised in Santa Monica, but then I moved to Malibu when I was, oh my gosh, I was 17, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. And let's talk about why you stopped doing it.
Well, I stopped doing Jodi in Malibu because at the time I had a boyfriend and he had all the equipment. He had the lighting, he had the cameras, he had everything, and I'm no longer with him. So that kind of stopped. But what I'd like to do, I'd like to start all over again, with well, maybe it wouldn't be Jodi in Malibu, but, maybe Malibu Jodi.
Malibu Jodi. I like that idea. So that was how many years ago that you did your last episode?
The last episode I did had to be maybe 6 years ago.
And let's come up to date. What has your life been since you did your last episode?
Well, I retired from working at a law firm for many, many years. And so I've been retired now for 3 years.
Now, when you were working for the law firm, did you go, in what capacity were you with the law firm?
Oh, I was a receptionist for many years, and I had to go downtown LA, which was very far. So what I did was I'd go to work, I'd come home, change my clothes, get a suitcase, go all the way to the Valley, which was an hour away, do a show, come home at about 12, 1 o'clock, get up at 6:20. And I was doing shows like 3 times a week.
And did anyone ever walk into the office and go, oh my God, aren't you the lady that I saw on the TV last night?
Yes, and it happened a lot in elevators, restaurants. And particularly when I was in the Valley, for some reason, I was recognized a lot. Yes.
And have you completely stopped auditioning or pursuing any type of a career in the arts?
At the moment I have, because of course of the pandemic, but what I would like to do now, I would like to go back to theater. We have a really nice theater here in the Pacific Palisades, and I'd love to start auditioning there, but of course nothing's being done. No. But I'd like to go back to theater, and I'd like to go back to interviewing.
Well, when you were growing up, I want to ask you about your exposure to arts beyond your mom. Arts and education is something that's very important to me. Do you have the exposure to the arts in school, or did you feel that because your mom was who she was at MGM, and she also worked at Warner Brothers, I think, and Columbia?
She worked at all the studios, but her contract was MGM.
Tell everyone a little bit about what that world was like under the guise of being under a contract. Did your mom have contracts like the stars had, of a 7-year contract, or was it an independent contractor? How did that work out for your mom?
Well, when she went to MGM, which was age 14, they immediately put her under contract. But she was able to be loaned out. So she was loaned out to Warner Brothers or Universal, Columbia, but she always said, my home is MGM. So that contract lasted until she broke it, and that was at the age of 30.
And I'm assuming that your mom made friends with a lot of the people that she worked with, and they must have been guests in your home.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you really, and, when I think back, I remember we were taking a drive one day and she says, let's go visit Jodi Carn. And Jodi Carn lived in Brentwood. And so we stopped there. Of course, my mom called her beforehand, and I had milk and cookies, and my mother had coffee. And I found Jodi was delightful. She had a fantastic sense of humor. And then I came home one day, and who's playing cards at the table was Dean Martin.
Everybody has that experience.
My father. And then, yeah, and then, then I was out one time and a woman came up to me and we went out to lunch, and that was Eleanor Powell. I mean, I met so many people, and I remember I was in Las Vegas at the Sands Hotel with my mom and dad, and I heard somebody yell, "Donna!" And I turned around and looked at him, and it was Red Skelton. And he overhugged my mom, and we ended up seeing his show. Then he took us out to eat. And I mean, sometimes, you don't realize it until now. I realize all the important people I met. I met Sinatra, and because my mom worked with him and taught him a routine. I think it was Ship Ahoy, I think. So it was great to meet all these people, but I was so young. I appreciate it more now.
Well, tell us a little bit about your dad. We've spoken about your mom. What did your dad do?
My mom and dad met when she was 12 and he was 15. They were neighbors, and they went steady. I mean, they're the only ones they ever had. It was absolutely amazing. My dad was not in show business. He backed my mom all the way. Sometimes she had to go on tour with the Marx Brothers. She was very close to, Chico. And my dad was basically a salesman. He sold all the homes that I'm living in right now.
Actually, and how long have you been in this home?
Pardon me?
How long have you been in this home?
Oh my gosh, I was 17 when I moved here, and
10 years.
And I'm now 72, which
you're a baby.
I know. I hate to admit it. God,
no, don't celebrate it. Bobby Horowitz, who is here, it's just a number.
It's just a number. And I left this house for 1 year because I ended up getting married for 1 year. But I was 19 and didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Now, you said earlier that you, perhaps if you had taken a different career path and come to New York, have you ever been to New York? Have you spent considerable time here?
I've never been to New York, and this is what is so sad. I was trying out for all my children, and I had 3 interviews here in Hollywood. And after the 3rd interview, they wanted to send me to New York. They said, "There's no doubt you got a part on this." What did I do? I turned it down and got married. That was a huge mistake.
In hindsight, or was it the right thing for you to do at that moment?
Well, I think being the age I was, and I'd have to go to New York all by myself, I was kind of like sheltered at home. I hadn't traveled alone by myself. And if I was to do it over again, what would I really like to do is go to New York with my mom and dad and all my children.
Well, when I look at these moments that we make in our lives, we make choices. It's always which road do we take? There's always that fork in the road. But if you were, and I'm assuming that you were, at least I hope you were, that you were in love at that time, it was the right decision for you to make at that time.
Probably that's how I have to look at it.
And do you regret now that you did not come to New York?
Well, a little bit, but I try not to think about it. I mean, I don't know how long I would have been on all my children. It could have been a month. It could have been years, And what I really regret is I have a friend. We have a mutual friend, by the way, John Fricky. And he said, "Why don't you come to New York, and I'll show you around." And I never did. I never made it. I should have done that.
I absolutely love John. John, if you're watching, I miss him. I haven't spoken to him in ages. I live in Rockland County. I'm just 25 minutes north of Manhattan. And because of the pandemic, I have not been in Manhattan since I was since March.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
so tell us a little bit about where you are right now. Where do you live now?
Right now, I live in Malibu. And I live in a home that overlooks the ocean, which is lovely. And I'm very close to the Pacific Coast Highway and Pacific Palisades. So when you walk out of my front door, I'm Malibu. But if you walk 3, 4 doors down, that's the Pacific Palisades.
I have to tell you that for 15 years of my life, I went to Malibu every summer, and I performed in the canyons. I miss it. Met wonderful people. What do you love most about Malibu?
The ocean.
The ocean.
and you know, it's quiet, which is nice. Sometimes the Pacific Coast Highway, you know, when it's warm out and things, that can be a problem. But we have everything we need here, particularly in the Pacific Palisades. And of course, I love Santa Monica too. That's where I was born and raised.
Now, I hate to ask this question, but have you been affected in the last couple of years with the fires in Malibu?
Yes, I have. I've had to go to a girlfriend's house. One time I stayed for 5 days, and the second time 9 days. It was only because it was smoky. My house was, but I wanted to get out. But you know, that's the problem you have of living up here. But so far, I better knock on wood. I've been okay.
So I've got a couple of questions that I want to ask you just to get a well-rounded idea of you. A book that you're reading right now that you absolutely recommend to everybody. You mentioned the Jack Haley book. As you're reading the book, what have you learned about Jack Haley that you didn't already know?
I think I knew most of it. What I've learned about Jack Haley is that meeting his grandson, which is great. And I'm going to, he invited me actually for a barbecue a couple weeks ago. And I said, well, let's just wait till after the pandemic. So I think through Jack Haley, I'm going to make a new friend with his grandson. Very
wonderful. And do you know, I always wonder why someone decides to sit down and put pen to paper. And of course, this is speculation. You can't speak for him. But why at this point do you think that he decided to write a book about Jack Haley?
I guess it was because, you know, I don't know. That's a good question. And I mean, I have another friend that just got in touch with me, Christopher Corman, who I guess there's a book out with his father, Harvey Corman. I've become friends with him.
Is there a whole society of children whose parents were part of this business? And do you have a way of relating with these kids because they come from that world that's different from your friends that weren't?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, particularly more and more now. But I going to the school that I went to, you know, that, and of course Elaine went there too. That's where we met. Professional school is a school that was, you know, for kids that were in show business and kids that also came from show business families.
Now, you've got this extensive background that you've come through. Have you ever taught yourself?
Did I ever what?
Have you ever taught?
No, I've never taught. I had thought of teaching some dance classes at one time. My mother laughed so hard. I have no patience. The thing is, I don't know how to break down a step. In other words, when I would take a dance class, they'd say, shuffle here, you know, do this, do that. And I just stood there. And the choreographers would just, why are you just standing there? I said, do it fast. I can't get a step unless I see how it's going to look.
And I asked you earlier, what was the last movie that you watched?
Oh, last movie that I watched. I belong to the Screen Actors Guild, so I to all the films. And gee, I haven't been to a film in 9 months. And
a lot of us haven't.
Yeah, it's been 9 months, but I was going to the movies every 2 weeks.
And are you a binge watcher?
Am I what?
Are you a binge watcher?
Yeah. I mean, I love films. I mean, and I get a lot of films here. They send it here, you know. One of my favorites, of course, was the Queen movie. I thought that was great.
And you know, and I want to talk a little bit about how you're keeping creative at this point in your life, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's what's hard. Well, I like you mentioned about my mother writing a book. I have been writing notes down, and I to try to get ideas. And I've been talking a lot to my cousin, who tells me a lot about her upbringing when she was young, with because his her brother was his father,
Mhm.
and I think that's going to be the next thing is writing a book.
And is there a lot of information out there about your mom?
Well, it seems like a lot of people have told me a lot, and if I research, there is. I mean, my cousin. I have two cousins. One cousin did a whole film on my mom, and he really was extensive on all the films that she was in, who she worked with. I mean, he did a brilliant job.
And where is that film? Is it possible to see it?
I have it here, and what he should do is he should put it up, or I should put it up on the YouTube.
Has he tried to pursue it as a documentary film?
I don't know. He's retired. He was a professor, and I have to ask him because he absolutely should do something with it. He'd been a brilliant job. And I,
Well, again, your mom works a lot behind the scenes, but is there any actual footage of your mom that's available?
what behind the scenes?
So performing.
Perform? Oh yeah, because all these films that my mom was choreographed, most of them she was in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was in them, and especially with Eleanor Powell and Ann Miller, Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, all those films.
And is there any particular film beyond The Wizard of Oz that your mom did that is as an absolute favorite of yours that you can watch over and over and over? And what are some iconic moments from?
Well, I think one of my favorite films. It's with her. Well, actually, she choreographed a film with Eleanor Powell and Fred Astaire. I can't really remember the name of it, but she choreographed it, and it's absolutely brilliant. That was my favorite of my.
That was Broadway Melody of 1940.
Yeah, I think that could be it. Yeah, and
Right.
go back and forth and dancing, and one does a step, then the other one does, and I thought the choreography was brilliant, and that was all my mother.
Well, I have to say this. I mean, Eleanor Powell is one of the greatest dancers that ever came out of Hollywood.
Absolutely.
And film buffs know this. But I don't think that she's remembered today the way that Ann Miller or Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly are remembered. And what do you think that is?
I don't know because I agree with you. I mean, I met all of them, and I mean, my favorite definitely was Eleanor Powell. I thought she was fantastic. Of course, I love Fred Astaire. I love them all, but and I loved Eleanor Powell as a person. She was such a great person. You know what she did? She would send a bouquet of flowers every single year to my mother for her birthday. And I remember my mom got a beautiful bouquet one year, and she looked at it and she just broke down because Eleanor had already ordered it before she passed away.
Wow. Wow. You know, I remember the story that Carol Burnett tells the story that Lucia Ball every year sent her flowers on her birthday. And and Lucille Ball had already arranged for the flowers to arrive for Carol before she unfortunately passed away. Now, you said that you are, and I'm hoping this is true, that you would think seriously about going back into the acting profession. Since you've grown up in that world, you've seen changes and everything. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the business that you absolutely love? And what are some of the changes that you absolutely resist?
Well, what I don't like in the acting field today is the auditions. I don't like the idea of you have to audition online and you have to, in other words, you're not going into a studio or an office and seeing someone's face to face. Now everything is, audition online. I find that to be difficult. But I wasn't really thinking of going back into doing anything like that. I was thinking more of theater.
And are there a lot of opportunities? I mean, right now there are not. Let's face it. But were there a lot of opportunities where you are to do theater?
Well, yes, we have, as I said, the Palisades Theater. We have the Morgan Theater, which I did 40 Carats at many years ago in Santa Monica. We have the Westchester Theater. They do very good work. And then you have some theaters in Hollywood. And I mean, that I would enjoy because you go straight to the theater, you audition, and you don't have to do everything online like for television and things like that.
So, Jodi, what's a typical day like in your life right now, especially now?
Yeah. Well, right now, let's see. I watch TV till about 2, 3 in the morning. I get up about 10. I take a walk every day with my dog. I spend a lot of time on Facebook. I talk to friends, and I meet new people, and I get ideas, for my mom, because as I said, I want to do a book on my mother. And that's about it. I don't socialize because I do it. I had one friend come over for about 10 minutes in the backyard. That was about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's being safe. Good for you.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to get personal here, so I don't want you to go there because this is for everybody. But we are living in a very polarized political climate right now, and without knowing where you stand, have you found that in recent years that you've become more political, or are you not political at all? Was there ever a period in your life where you were political?
I was never very political, no. But I will tell you, in the last few years, I've become very political.
And is that good or bad?
Well, I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's good because I saw what was going on, and it's been rough the last few years. You have to admit that.
Yes, and regardless of what side you're on politically, there are some that believe that, especially people in the arts or anything, that it's best not to put your opinions out there. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with it? And do you get political on social media?
I don't. Social media, what I usually do, I'm a big animal nut, so I have a lot of animal.
I am too.
Yeah, I try to keep things up. I get political with my friends. I mean, they all know how I think. But I try, I don't want to argue, I don't know if that really works. But I've been I watch TV all the time. I see what's going on, and it's been a weird 4 years.
To say the least. And of course, social media, for the most part, is something that's fairly new in our lives. When, where, and how did you embrace social media?
Oh, it's been years. I had a roommate here, I remember, some years ago, and she said, "Why aren't you on Facebook?" I said, "I didn't know about it." So she put me on Facebook, and then from there I went to Twitter. I open up more on Twitter than Facebook. I'll give more of my opinions. And then I go on Instagram. So it's been for some years, but as far as, Facebook, I think I've been on for 15 years or something, long time.
And so what's next for you?
Getting out of this pandemic, probably, and getting myself immunized. And then I can feel like I can start living again.
Now, we've already talked about the fact that there is a book in there about your mom. I think there's also an amazing book there about you, Jodi. You've had an amazing life. You've worked with a lot of people. You've known a lot of people. You've got some great life lessons from the people that you've worked with and known over the years. I think it's important for your story to get out there as well. Do you write?
Well, I think what I would like to do is maybe write a book about my mother and me.
That would be great.
Yeah, because everything that the people I met and everything was, through her. And it was just a wonderful life, So, yes, so many people have told me to do it. And I think it's time. It's definitely time for me to do it.
Well, I hope that you do it. I hope that when I think of the pandemic and the time that we're going through right now, I think of this as a pause. I think it's time for all of us to sit, take a collective deep breath together, and think about what we have, what we had, and what we desire in our lives.
That's what we have to do. I know a lot of people are so depressed they can't even do anything. But no, I'm hopeful, and I think that we're going to get over this, and things are going to change, and I look for happy things.
Jodi, what keeps you grounded?
My dog.
Now, what kind of dog do you have?
Do you want to see her? She's right here.
Yes, of course. Oh my God, she's a cutie. She's
Yeah.
a cutie.
Her name is Willow, and I adopted her. And I think what stays grounded is I think I appreciate everything that I have.
Mhm.
You know, I think of the people out there that don't have anything. I go down the street on the Coast Highway and I see people living, you know, on the streets and stuff. And I think I have no reason to complain about anything.
Mhm. You know, as a dear friend of mine says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you, do you have any ideas? And of course, again, this is speculation on how we're going to get through all this.
Well, I'm hoping that it won't be for too much longer. I think we're going to get the immunizations, what, in a few months?
Yeah, they're on their way.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I can only hope so. I mean, every day, you know, I do a lot of walking, and as I said, I'll read, and of course I watch the news. That's enough to depress anyone.
You and I are probably up at the same time every night, yelling at the TV.
That's right.
I do a lot of that.
And I'm sure we're on the same page on everything on that.
It sounds like we are.
Yes.
Jodi, I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have.
Oh, absolutely.
You are absolutely wonderful, and please stay in touch with me. And when the book comes out, I want to be your first interview for the book.
And I was just going to say that too, because I want to go back to interviewing, and I want to interview you face to face also.
Well, what's the one question that you would ask me right now?
What's so impressive?
What's the one question you would ask me?
When I do a talk show, will you please be my guest?
I will absolutely be your guest, and I cannot wait. We are at the end of our show, and I want to thank this hour just flew for me. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I sure did.
If you did enjoy the show today, everyone, please go to my website, which is richardskipper.com, and sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. And I want to let you all know that if you are around tonight at 8 o'clock our time, I think that's 5 o'clock your time, Jodi, I am going to be hosting the Legacy Awards. Dancers Over 40, Jerry Kansas, Dennis Burchell, Francis J. Roach, all incredible dancers with incredible stories to tell. We also have a very special tribute tonight to my dear friend Marge Champion, she was a dear, dear friend. And we just lost her a few months ago at the age of 102. So God bless her. Just wonderful. I was lucky enough to see her last year before the pandemic set in. And I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. One thing that I'm really learning about and reading about is what we call transactional living. Stop it. Do what we do to make others happy, and you'll be happy in return. And go out, go to your Facebook friends list, go to the 5th name that pops up, and reach out and call them, not with an email, not with a text, not with a private message. Call them and let them know what they mean in your life. Now, before we sign off, Jodi, I want to give you the final word. Anything you want to expound upon about anything that we talked about today that you would like to add to, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to the world right now. It's yours. And thank you, Jodi.
Well, thank you. And my message is for people out there, keep your chin up. Know that things are going to get better, because it can't get much worse. And just keep watching people like you. You know what I'm saying? You, Richard, because you have such a great attitude. And I really appreciate that you had me on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you were here. And make it a better tomorrow. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.